I was transported. So let me come back. Thank you so much. That was a meditation. It was beautiful. So I want to start with a joke that I have told before, and I'm putting it in context with something else. But anyway, bear with me. A man fell off of a cliff and was hanging precariously from a tree branch. He cried out, "God, please help me." God answered, "Have faith and I will protect you. Let go of the branch." The man, stunned, cried out, "Is there anyone else up there?" And so this joke reminds me of Peter on the water, remember? So, "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You have little faith," he said. "Why did you doubt?" And for me, there's something in common with both of these. What do y'all see the commonality?
Trust.
Ha! Yes, thank you. Exactly. Trust. Good job. Trust. It's absolutely the idea of trust. And that's what we've been working on, right? Trust. And I have to say that it's really been moving through me in big ways and hard ways and emotional ways. And so bear with me as I try to give the message today. What I discover and am continually discovering the series on trust and reading about trust is it's a continual practice, right? It's a ceaseless practice. It's an open-hearted practice. It's an open-minded practice. And it's a practice of being, it's a way of living, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to be betrayed or you're not going to be hurt, because it will come, right? And here's the practice, is if it comes, you know you'll be okay because you have a practice for it. Isn't that beautiful? And the biggest piece that I'm also learning is you know the difference between hope and trust. When you live in this open-hearted way and open-minded way of looking at yourself, you understand your own emotional needs. And so guess what you don't do? You don't look to someone else to fill them. Because very often when you look to someone else to fill them, what's going to happen? There's going to be disappointment. There's going to be let down. And so that's the idea of trust. That's the idea of living into trust. And the piece that, we've been building all along, and today is tending the garden of trust. Today is knowing that it's just a ceaseless practice. It's an understanding of what it is, and it's committing to practicing an open-hearted way of living. And today is trust in others. But here's what we're learning is unless you don't trust yourself, which I'm going to say is over here, right? It's going to be hard to trust God. It's going to be hard to trust others. It's going to be hard to trust life. It all starts with trusting the self. That's big, right? Just sit with that, trusting the self. And so I'm going back to what our affirmation was when I started the series, and it was, I trust myself with myself. And that first M is a lowercase, and that second M is capital. And the capital is to signify the divine essence. So you can, if you feel like you're having a hard time trusting yourself in your human experience, you can say, you know what? I'm going to trust myself. That's the divine essence of me. That divine essence always knows, right? When I make room for that, when I sit with that, when I pray, when I meditate, it's always going to come. The answer is always going to come. And here's how you know that the answer is going to come. Because you're going to feel lighter. You're going to feel freedom. You're going to feel possibility. Right? Y'all agree with that? So I trust myself with myself. I trust myself with myself. I have so much to say about this sermon. We could be here for days. I have so much to say. And I want to say this. I really earned my money this week, y'all. I really earn my money, because every time I work on a sermon, I really do the check-in work and the awareness and the emotional stuff and the spiritual stuff, because that's the only way that I can actually give anything to y'all, anything inspiring. And this was a week of just crying, because I had to look over trust, right? I had to look over those stories. I had to look over the stories I've told myself, or the pieces of betrayal, whatever they are, betraying myself, others betraying him, whatever it is. I had to really look at it. So I spent a couple of days just in my feelings and letting myself feel it, letting myself cry. So anyway, there's a lot to say. So let me go ahead and get started. So what I want to ask you is 3 questions, and these are 3 questions we're going to work on throughout the sermon today. And one is, are you stuck in old stories of betrayal and our unworthiness? And somebody laughed. Guess we know the answer, right? And that's the thing. When I ask that question, are you stuck in old stories of betrayal and unworthiness, you know the answer like that. Am I right? Yes. Like that. Raise your hand. You know it like that. Good, we have work to do. I love it. Okay. If so, are you willing to reframe the script? Yes. Yay, I have a lot of yeses. Are you willing to reframe the script? And if you're willing to reframe the script, are you willing to practice forgiveness? I love that. I love all of the yes. Good, we have good work to do today. We have good work. And then the last one is, are you willing to step into the open-hearted experience of trust? Are you willing? Oh, I love it. Everyone's willing. That's a beautiful thing. That's where we start, right? The number one step, the very first step. Willingness. It's absolute willingness. So that's what I want to talk about is, first, just recognize, and as I go through my sermon, recognize where you are with old stories of betrayal, of unworthiness. Just recognize where you are with that. And then recognize if you're willing to reframe that script, to look at it differently. Because here's what I know about those old stories is every time I tell them, I'm a victim. And that doesn't feel comfortable. At some point you outgrow it, right? At some point you're like, enough already. So that's what we're going to talk about. Also the forgiveness piece, if you're willing to forgive, and then if you're willing to be in that place, that open-hearted place of trust, that open-hearted place that it doesn't matter whatever shows up or whatever comes, you know you're going to deal with it, you know you're okay. So the first one is recognizing the old stories. And do y'all remember that song? And I wish I could sing. And Keith, can you help me out? It's, hey, won't you play another somebody done somebody wrong song? Won't you play another somebody done somebody wrong song? And it makes me feel at home. Listen to that song. What is that song? I'm comfortable with misery. I'm comfortable with the song of somebody done somebody wrong song. And who's usually in the somebody that did the something wrong? Us. Somebody did us wrong. I'm going to play that song because guess what? I'm comfortable in that. That's big, huh? I'm comfortable in that. So as I was going through this, like that song just came to me like, oh my God. It was a 70s song, I think. Yeah. So anyway, y'all know these stories. You know the stories where someone's the villain. You know the story of being the victim of the wrongdoing. You know the story of being the short end of the stick. I'm so bad at those little things. But right, getting the short end of the stick or the small straw, I don't know. Anyway, it's short straw, short end of the stick. It all works out, right? Y'all know those stories. You know those stories. And And as I was moving through this, one of these old stories came to me. And I mean, it came to me in a big, big way. And it's a really old story. I mean, it's old. Like, I'm in my, almost mid-50s? This is like my 20s. That's how old the story is. Really old. And as I hear the story, of course, I'm the victim. Of course, somebody did me wrong. Of course, it had such power and control over me that in so many ways, it even changed the trajectory of my life. And in a lot of ways, it really did. And I found myself telling this story, and I'm like, why is this showing up? Why is this coming up? And I was like, well, I'm reading this book on trust, and Iyanla Vanzant talks to a lot of clients and their stories of betrayal. So, right, of course I'm going to go through that. But why else is it coming up? So I can heal it. So I can heal it. And as I'm trying to heal it, of course, I'm letting myself feel it. And one of the things I recognize is I'm beating myself up. Why am I beating myself up? You should have healed this by now. Didn't you heal this by now? I thought you healed this by now. Why is it still coming up? The beating myself up didn't really help. I did it anyway. But I let myself be a witness to it, right? I let myself be a witness to it. And there's no sense in telling y'all the story, because here's the thing, I'm sick of it. I don't want to tell the details. I don't give up. Right? Just don't. I really don't. Because I'm not anybody's victim, right? And I'm tired of the story that puts me in the victim. I'm just really tired of it. I know, right? And I know y'all are too. I know y'all are too, tired of those victim stories. So here's what, here's one of the practices, right? Because I no longer want this. I no longer believe in it. And it takes me to the second point of reframing the script. So what does it mean? And I'm going to share my process. Dearest one, when I reflect on this idea of trusting others, I am reminded of old hurts, old stories of betrayal, and the times when trust was broken. And my practice reminds me that to heal it, I must feel it. It is the only way through. So I commit to giving my feelings spaciousness, and in place of taking stock of someone else's inventory, something I'm comfortable doing and something I'm rather good at, I will commit to going within to discover what I know about myself. First, I am not a victim. I know that I have responsibility, possibility, and the ability to make choices. More than that, I am an agent of change. I choose to see this experience that once brought me to my knees as a growing experience. Because of it, I follow Jesus' very powerful advice in Matthew 7:24-27. I continually build my home on a rock-solid foundation. Yes, the winds will howl, the rain will come, and even floods will come, but I know that my house stands firm. I am nobody's victim. In fact, I am my own best friend, my own advocate. I can trust myself. And last, but certainly not least, I choose forgiveness. I choose freedom. So this is what, thank you guys, thank you. So after the suffering, after the crying, this is what came. This is what came, right? That's the practice of reframing the script. That's it. And also being willing to take responsibility for it, being willing to do the work of forgiveness, which isn't always easy. It's not always easy. So as I was working on my sermon yesterday, a friend of mine called, which, by the way, if you don't want to show up in my sermons, don't call on Saturdays. So talk to me on a Monday. By Saturday, I will have forgotten. But if you call on when I'm working, it's going to show up. So my friend calls and is telling me about feelings around her sister. Just some really hard stuff, right? Just some really hard stuff. And feeling like she owes me an apology. My sister owes me an apology. So I said, you know there's a possibility she'll never apologize. She's like, I know. And she thinks I owe her an apology, right? And I said, so are you tired of the feeling? She's like, yeah. I don't want to be here. I'm like, so are you willing to forgive? Yeah, what does that look like? What do I do? And so I gave her 2 of my practices that have just worked miracles. One of them, y'all, I'm sure y'all know about, is the Ho'oponopono. Yeah, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. She's like, when do I do it? I said, all the time. Every time your sister comes up, every time those stories come up in your mind, because they will, you say it. Every single time. She's like, okay, what else? And I said, meditate. I said, and even in your meditation, you can imagine that you're cutting the ties, right? The ties of the stories, the ties of the conflict between you. So she said, okay, so I'm going to check in with her later. See, and I'm going to tell her, hey, you were in my sermon. You got to show up. I'm so grateful how that shows up, right? It helps me do the practice. So when we reframe the script, we're looking through a new lens. We're looking through a new lens. And I think it's this lens of just allowing, right? Allowing humans to be human. That's big, right? Because we all are. We are all doing the best we can do. People make mistakes. I've made mistakes. People hurt us. I've hurt people, right? And it's just allowing for humanity, allowing for the spaciousness of that. And not saying I'm going to hear it be anybody's victim, but I'm going to have compassion for that. That's the other piece that I finally came to with this, is I had compassion for the other person that did the hurt. Because y'all know as well as I do that hurt people, right? Hurt people. And that story, that stuff that was taking hold of me, it was a person who's deeply hurt and deeply wounded. And that's the best that person can do. And that's always the biggest piece of it, right? That's always the biggest piece. So, where are we? So last, it is trust is an open-hearted experience. Real trust is a heart-centered, heart-expanding experience. It is a process and a practice that asks us to be in the present moment, right? You're not stuck in the past story. You come to this new moment with the presence, in the presence. I told y'all about how my grandmother used to say she didn't trust her daughters, and she would say, how can I trust you when I don't trust myself? That's huge, because then what did they carry within themselves? They didn't trust themselves. So they weren't able to live in this open-heartedness. And that's what we want, to live in an open-heartedness, to believe that the universe is built on this bent towards healing. It's a friendly place, right? It's a friendly place. And we have to live from that hope. We absolutely do. There's something else that Iyanla Vanzant says about this. She says, trusting others is a decision that you must make moment by moment, knowing that there are no guarantees when it comes to dealing with other people. Sometimes you will make the right decision, and other times you will be way off. And no matter what happens, trust in yourself is the only guarantee you will have that you will be okay no matter what happens. Isn't that beautiful? Because of self-trust, what it does is it gives you stamina. It gives you fortitude. So when the disappointments come, when the hurt comes, when whatever it is come, you know, guess what? I built my house on solid foundation. I have a solid foundation. Whatever comes, here's the biggest piece, and y'all know this, and this is something Iyanla Vanzant is always saying. It doesn't happen to me, it happens for me. Whatever it is. And so that story that I told, or I've been telling myself, I also looked at how the person I am is stronger because of that. Right? The person I am doesn't put up with that. Does that make sense? The person I am sets boundaries, and healthy ones, because of that. It grew me in a really beautiful way. It grew me. You can trust yourself with yourself, right? So I would like to end with this poem by Naomi Shihab Nye. Have y'all heard of her? She's an American Arab poet. She was born to a Palestinian father and an American mother. She's a professor of creative writing at Texas State University. And she has this poem called Gate A4. Wandering around the Albuquerque airport terminal after learning my flight had been delayed 4 hours, I heard an announcement. If anyone in the vicinity of Gate A4 understands any Arabic, please come to the gate immediately. Well, one pauses these days. Gate A4 was my own gate, and so I went there. An older woman in full traditional Palestinian embroidered dress, just like my grandma wore, was crumpled on the floor, wailing. "Help," said the flight attendant. "Talk to her. What is her problem? We told her the flight was going to be late, and she did this." I stopped to put my arm around the woman and spoke haltingly. "Shuduwa, shubitu, habiti, santi, shway, min fadlik, shubit siwi." The minute she heard any words she knew, however poorly used, she stopped crying. She thought the flight had been canceled entirely. She needed to be in El Paso for major medical treatment the next day. I said, "No, we're fine. You'll get there. Just later. Who is picking you up? Let's call him." We called her son. I spoke with him in English. I told him I would stay with his mother till we got on the plane and ride next to her. She talked to him. Then we called her other sons just for the fun of it. Then we called my dad, and he and she spoke for a while in Arabic, and found out, of course, they had 10 shared friends. Then I thought, just for the heck of it, why not call some Palestinian poets I know and let them chat with her? This all took up to 2 hours. She was laughing a lot by then, telling of her life, patting my knee, answering questions. She had pulled a sack of homemade mamoul cookies, little powdered sugar crumbly mounds stuffed with dates and nuts, from her bag, and was offering them to all the women at the gate. To my amazement, not a single woman declined one. It was like a sacrament. The traveler from Argentina, the mom from California, the lovely woman from Laredo, we were all covered with the same powdered sugar and smiling. There is no better cookie. And then the airline broke out free apple juice from huge coolers, and 2 little girls from our flight ran around serving it, and they were covered with powdered sugar too. And I noticed my new best friend, by now we were holding hands, had a potted plant poking out of her bag, some medicinal thing with green furry leaves, such an old country tradition. Always carry a plant. Always stay rooted somewhere. As I looked around that gate of late and weary ones, and I thought, this is the world I want to live in, the shared world. Not a single person in that gate, once the crying of confusion stopped, seemed apprehensive about any other person. They took the cookies. I wanted to hug all those women too. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost. Just breathe that in, right? And know that I love you, I support you, and I encourage you. Amen.
Amen.